Hello, and welcome back to Roll the Table. This will be a first of 3 videos dedicated to adding elements of the 2024 Player's Handbook into your 2014 games, still using the 2014 Player's Handbook. Now, this could be if you want to slowly integrate some of the rules in with planning on eventually changing over at the end of the current campaign or at a certain stopping point, or if you just want to pick and choose a few rules to add in for a little bit of change and flavor into your 2014 games. So we're moving from the 2014 to the 2024 and picking the best pieces out of this to add to your current 2014 games. This video will be centered around classes. The other 2 videos, one will be for races and the other last will be for just general rules. My qualifications for the options that I chose, they're not necessarily the best rules, I think, for these new classes. They might not necessarily be the most flashy or most powerful, but I think are the easiest and still pretty cool rules to apply that won't clash and mess up your 2014 games. Some of the rules just don't mesh very well to pick it apart. It's designed to be used with the other 2024 rules, and kind of pulling it apart from those, it just doesn't quite work the same. Or some of the things that I disqualified that I'll mention later on under each class, I just chose that probably wasn't the best one to add because it was just a little too complicated to add and ask a player to add and change their character without actually having the book in front of them to read through it and see exactly what you're talking about, or they'll forget exactly how it's supposed to work. So these are simple, easy rules. I picked one for each class. A few do have honorable mentions, that mostly for the kind of mention some of the things I just mentioned, that they're good, but I didn't pick them because of one of those reasons. So we'll just go down the list in alphabetical order. The first up is going to be the Barbarian. For the Barbarian, has a couple good quality of life improvements around its rage and other abilities. Probably the easiest one to add is the rage. It's the primary feature of the Barbarian, but it's so hard for them to keep up sometimes. So in combat, in the 2024 rules, they can use a bonus action to keep their rage going and basically like pound on their chest and keep their rage up. It just simplifies it from like, oh, if I it cuts out a little bit of that nonsense of like, oh, can I just cut myself or attack myself, or can I find a bug to attack, or can one of my allies attack me to keep my rage going? It cuts it out, makes it a little bit more simpler, and let's keep that core feature going in the middle of combat, or if they're out of running from one enemy to the next, but they don't quite make it into range of the other one, they can still use their bonus action to keep that rage going so that they don't lose out on that. For Barbarian, I also picked another one that's really simple to use, and it actually helps out. I've already implemented this with Barbarian in my game, and it just clarification wise from how to like clear it out as the danger sense, instead of trying to figure out, oh, do I see that, or do I know where the source is coming from? It just flat out works all the time now. You don't have to figure out any of that stuff. You don't need to think about what direction it's coming from. Oh, does the Barbarian see the ground give out from under him and jump out the way in time? Oh, he just senses it coming because he's a Barbarian. Simple as that. A little fantasy-esque, write it off and go on, but I know, but hey, that's D&D. So if it requires a dex save, the barbarian's doing it at advantage with his danger sense up. Simple quality of life for the barbarian, and honestly for the DM too, because it gives you one less thing to worry about or try to figure out and answer that question. Next up is the bard. It's a simple, easy rule for the bard to add is the bardic inspiration die. Instead of it just being 10 minutes, it lasts for an hour. It makes it much easier for people to carry over from one combat to the next, or from one social situation to another social situation if you're moving around in town, or something out of combat. It helps alleviate some of that. Oh, I forgot to use my inspiration. Well, you still have it for another 50 minutes. You'll be okay. And another simple quality of life. It's a basic core feature of the bard and makes it more useful and doesn't punish people for forgetting that they have it. Next up is the cleric. You'll kind of see a theme here. It's just helping improve on their core features that they can use better or more often, or makes it more useful throughout the 2024 book, and the rules that I picked that are easy to add to. And for the cleric is just simply they have more channel divinity uses. Instead of having to wait in the 2014 rule all the way until 6th level before they get a second use. They start off with 2 right away as soon as they get it. I'll give you a quick look at the chart. At scale, at first glance, I thought it scaled with proficiency bonus, but if you look closely, it's just slightly off. And it only goes up to 4, not all the way up to 6. Give you a glance here. You'll see it starts off with 2 right away, and then at level 6, then it goes up to 3, and then it goes up to 4 down at level 18. For the druid, my first instinct was to just they made it easier for druids life in general that they can talk while they're wild shaped. No more trying to bark out like a dog or pat the ground 3 times when they're a horse or a bear to try to answer questions. Just let them talk. Let them join in on the social interactions while they're wild shaped. But I think that's just such a minor thing that it's not quite as powerful as what some of the other classes are getting. I think when I handed some of these out to my players, I think the druid felt a little underwhelmed when compared to what some of the other people were getting. So I went back and took another look and think that let them pick up a primal order as well. It's basically it lets them kind of specialize their druid a little bit. They can take the magician. They could choose one of these that's a magician. They know an extra druidic cantrip. That's the main feature of it. It also adds some bonuses to the Arcana and Nature check using their wisdom. Or the Warden, they gain proficiency with martial weapons and training with medium armor. So they want to spend more time in their humanoid form and not wild shaped. Want to have either be up frontlining or just be a caster and be a little bit more durable. Then they could go with that second one. Or they might want to go with the magician and have that extra cantrip if they want to be more of a heavy caster. But the choice is there for them. For the fighter, they get more uses of their second wind. I thought this was a great use of the fighter's abilities. You know, their biggest thing is biggest improvement for fighters is they get all the weapon masteries. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the general rules, but I think that's a little bit too much to add in to just one class without adding it to all, and I'll go a little bit more into why I didn't pick that in the general rules. But the second wind ability is something that's easy to just drop into your 2014 game. Oh, you're not adding something new, you're just tweaking an old one a little bit. Instead of just having one use, they start off with 2 uses, and at level 5, they go up, or level 4, they go up to 3 uses, and then at level 10, they go up to 4 uses, and they get one of those back at a short rest, and then of course on a long rest all that refreshes. And they gave it a little bit more, since they have more of them to use. They gave extra abilities to be used with it. But I wouldn't add all of them in at the same time. So the one I picked to add in that I think is the biggest boost to a fighter to give them more oomph for that out of combat stuff, since a lot of times, you know, your marshals are kind of left in the wind they're really good at swinging, but when not swinging swords or blocking with their shield, they're kind of left out a little behind some of the other classes. But the ability is called Tactical Mind, and with that they can expend one of their, when they fail an ability check, they can expend one of their second wind uses to push themselves to try just a little bit harder and roll that die, and add that to the ability check instead of gaining any hit points. So with the fighter's hit die of a D10, that could possibly be a pretty big boost. You know, it could change that 12 failed dex save all the way up to a 22 if they roll max on it, which would most definitely pass almost just about any dex check. So that gives them a pretty big boost and makes them a lot more reliable in some of the skills that they might be lacking in, or like I said, just makes them more useful out of combat as well. And then they regain that back on a short rest, one of them back on a short rest, and then they'd still come out ahead and have more second wind uses than they would have had before. After fighter, the monk, there's so much improved with the monk. There's could probably do a full 20-minute video just on the monk itself with all the improvements, but I think the most beneficial and the easiest add to the monk is just the improved martial arts die. Instead of starting out off a D4, you start them off of a D6, and every time that they would have scaled up before in 2014, they still continue to scale up. So if you're looking at the 2014 chart, when they would have went up from a D4 to a D6, instead bump them up to that D8, and the next time up to that D10, and so on. Moving on to Paladin. I'm sure many of you've heard that it kind of got a nerf with its smites. But one thing that did improve with the Paladin is they got more channel divinities similar to the cleric. They get 2 at level 3 and 3 at level 11. An honorable mention for both the Paladin and the Ranger, I'll skip ahead a little bit and just kind of knock them both at the same time, is they gave them a fighting style where they can take 2 cantrips to have. Normally the Paladin and the Ranger wouldn't have cantrips, but instead of taking one of the other fighting styles, you know, to boost up their damage or their accuracy, or their defense, they can take this. This is for the Paladin. It's called Blessed Warrior. And for the Druid, it's called Druidic Warrior fighting style. For the Ranger, so basically the Ranger, you get 2 Druid cantrips, and for the Paladin, you get 2 Cleric cantrips if you take that fighting style instead of some of the other ones. I chose not to go with that just because it's hard to drop in the middle of a campaign when people already have their fighting styles chosen, and they may feel like they're kind of missing out. Whereas, with the added channel divinity, they can just bump up that number a little bit, and they don't have to completely go redo and choose different fighting styles, which might have affected some of the other choices that they've made with their character. And the whole purpose of this video is stuff you can drop right in, and people don't have to redo their character sheets or reselect out other stuff. You can just add it right in. It's all beneficial, and then you just keep moving on with just a slightly better character with a slight move towards the 2024 rules. For the Ranger, is that they always have Hunter's Mark prepared. There's a lot of other abilities that later on add on to the Hunter's Mark on the 2024 Ranger, but we won't go into all of that. There's plenty of Ranger specific videos out there, but for the Ranger's ability, just give it that. They always have it prepared, and they can cast it 2 free times a day without using a spell slot. And lastly, that brings us up to the Rogue. The Rogue didn't get as much new stuff as a lot of the other classes because it was already a pretty strong class, in honesty. So it was hard selecting something for it. I would love to say the Cunning Strike is probably the best new feature for the Rogue. Definitely one of the ones that sticks out, but I went and dropped it right into your 2014 D&D campaign just because there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of different abilities they gain over different levels. It'd be hard for a player to be able to catch on to all those without that book actually in front of them. So instead I just went with Steady Aim. It's just part of the core class now. I know if you're familiar with it from Tasha's, it's just baked right into the class now. It's no optional rule. They can just do it all the time, starting at level 3. So just about any rogue can do that. If you're not already using it, give it to your rogue. Let them use it. If you're not familiar with it, basically, if they have not moved, they can use their bonus action to give them advantage on their next attack. Basically, they're taking the time to pick out that vital point before they stab them or shoot their arrow or whatnot, and then their movement becomes 0, so they can't steady aim, shoot, and then move away or anything. Their movement's 0 after they take that steady aim, so they're sacrificing a little bit for that advantage, but it makes sense as a rogue will be able to, pick out those sweet spots to stab at or to shoot at to try to get that sneak attack off for them, which is the only way that rogues really keep up in the damage output. I hope you enjoyed this video. Some of the other ones probably be a little bit shorter than this one. Again, I'll be doing another video voted on classes and another one voted on rules in general that you can add to your 2014 games. So the best pieces from the 2024 rules. Once those videos are up, I will edit this one to include those links in the description. Thank you.